So we plugged in 4, and we got 1. So we're going to go to the right 4, and up 1. And that's 1 point. Now we plug in 5. So we have 5 minus 5, which is 0. So then what's our point here? We plugged in 5 and got 0. So what's our coordinate point? 5, 0. So we go to the right 5 and stay on 0. Now we plug in 6 to our equation. So we have 6 minus 5. And the absolute value, 6 minus 5 is 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1. So then what's our point here? 6, 1. So we go to the right 6 and up 1. Now that we have our 3 points, we just draw our V. So always, to help you start, we plug what's inside of our parentheses equal to 0, and that's going to be our number in the middle. So then we just need one number bigger and one number smaller.
Do we have to use those numbers?
No. You could use, it's really helpful to use 5, so use this trick to help you find that number in the middle, the tip of your V. And then you just need one number above and one number below. So you could say like 2, 5, and 7 if you wanted to. 2, 5, and 8. Like just one number before and one number that's smaller, one number that's bigger than the number in the middle. So we got the 5 by setting the inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So that's always going to help us with our starting number. So this point, that's the most important part, where this V starts. We set our inside of the absolute value equal to 0, and that'll give us the number that we start with. Then you just need one number smaller. So a number smaller, we picked 4, and then a number larger. We picked 6. So this is our start here. Good question. If you pick different numbers to tell if you did it right, you're always going to have that same, like this point here will always be the same, this one. So that's why it's super important to find like this number here. And then your arrows are going to go in like the same direction, but it won't be exactly this point. It could be this point up here. So it'll be approximately the same. It's going to look the same, but your points are just going to be a little bit different, but it would still look the same. So when you guys have this on your quiz on Friday, I am just looking for the number in the middle, and then you need any number smaller and any number bigger. So in order to graph these, you need 3 points. All right, ready for 25? Yes? So we have g of x is equal to the absolute value of x plus 2. So to find our starting number, we set what's inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So we have x plus 2 is equal to 0. We subtract 2 on both sides, so x is equal to negative 2. So when we plug in numbers, we're going to plug in negative 2, and then we need one number smaller and one number bigger. So what's a number smaller than negative 2? Negative 3. What's a number bigger than negative 2? Negative 1. So now we can plug those into our equation. So we have the absolute value of negative 3 plus 2, which is what? Negative 3 plus 2? negative 1, so the absolute value of negative 1
1.
is 1. So then what's our point here?
Negative 3, 1.
Negative 3, 1. So we get our point from our x number and our y number. Now we can go to our graph and plot this. So we started by plugging in negative 3. That means we go to the left 3 and up 1. Now we plug in negative 2. So we have negative 2 plus 2. What's negative 2 plus 2? 0. So then what's our point here?
Negative 2, 0.
Negative 2, 0. So we go to the left 2 and stay on 0. And now we plug in negative 1. So we have negative 1 plus 2. What's negative 1 plus 2?
1.
1. So what's the absolute value of 1?
1.
1. And what's our point here?
Negative 1, 1.
Negative 1, 1. So we go to the left 1 and up 1. Now that we have our 3 points, we draw our V. Any questions here?
So we'll always use this method to get the middle number?
Yep. Because if you don't use this, then to find that middle number, you're just going to have to keep plugging in points. Like for this one, if we started with 0 and plugged in 0, we would get this point up here, but then we would need to plug in more points until we got this tip here. So you would always use this method just to help you find that middle number, so you don't have to keep in plugging points, plugging more points, plugging more points. All right, let's do 26. So 26 is the absolute value of 2x minus 8. So again, just like the other ones, to find out what we plug in first, we set what's inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So this is 2x is equal to 0. What would x be? So if x is being multiplied to 2, how do we get rid of the 2?
Times negative 2.
Times 4?
How do we get rid of that 2? We want to move the 2 to the other side. What's the inverse of multiplication? Division. So we divide both sides by 2. What's 0 divided by 2? 0. So x is equal to 0. So the number we're going to start with here is 0. Now we need a number bigger than 0 and smaller than 0. What's a number smaller?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. What's a number bigger?
1.
1. And now we plug in. So we have 2, the absolute value of 2 times negative 1 minus 8. What is 2 times negative 1?
Negative 2?
Negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 2 minus 8. What's the absolute value of negative 2? Positive 2. And then what's positive 2 minus 8? Negative 6. Because that negative 8 is bigger. So then what's our coordinate point here? Negative 1, negative 6. So then we can go to our graph. We're going to go to the left 1 and then down 6. And put our point there. Now we plug in 0. So we have the absolute value of 2 times 0 minus 8. What's 2 times 0? 0. And then 0 minus 8? Negative 8. So what's our point here? 0, negative 8. So we stay at 0 and go down to negative 8. And now we're going to plug in 1. So we have 2 times 1 minus 8. What's 2 times 1? 2. What's the absolute value of 2? 2. And then what's 2 minus 8? Negative 6. So then what's our point here? 1, negative 6. So we go to the right one and go down negative 6. Once we have our 3 points, we can draw our V. Any questions on this one?
Are we gonna have to just take the domain and range on the quiz?
Nope. We're going to skip domain and range for now. So don't worry about the domain and range. All you're going to do on the quiz is graph. So we're going to graph piecewise functions, and we're graphing absolute value. All right, let's look at 27. So 27 is the absolute value of negative 3x plus 3. What do we do first here? We set the inside part equal to 0. So negative 3x is equal to 0. So then what do we get for x? If we divide both sides by negative 3, what's 0 divided by negative 3? 0. So what's the first number we're going to plug in? 0. And then we need a number bigger and a number smaller. So what's a number smaller than 0? Negative 1. What's a number bigger? 1. So now we plug negative 1 in. So we have the absolute value of negative 3 times negative 1 plus 3. What's negative 3 times negative 1? Positive 3. And then what's the absolute value of positive 3? 3. And then 3 plus 3 is 6. So then what's our point here? What's our coordinate point? Negative 1, 6. So remember, we take our x and we take our y, and that's our point. So now we can graph it. So we go to the left one, to negative 1, and then we go up 6. Put our point there. What do we do next? Plug in 0. So we have the absolute value of negative 3 times 0 plus 3. What's negative 3 times 0? 0. And the absolute value of 0? Just 0. So then 0 plus 3? What's 0 plus 3? 3. So what's our coordinate point? 0, 3. So we stay on 0 and go up 3. Okay, now we plug in 1. So we have the absolute value of negative 3 times 1. What's negative 3 times 1? Negative 3. And the absolute value of negative 3? 3. So then 3 plus 3? 6. So then what's our coordinate point here? 1, 6. So we go to the right 1 and up 6. And once we have our 3 points, we connect our 3 dots with our V. Alright, so that one was 27, so now let's look at 28. So now we have 2 times the absolute value of x minus 4 plus 6. So how do we start? We set what's inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So x minus 4 is equal to 0. How do we solve for x here? What's happening between the x and the 4? So it's subtraction, so we do the inverse, which is addition. So we add 4 to both sides. So this is x is equal to 4. So what number are we going to plug in here? 4, and then we need a number smaller and a number bigger. So what else can we plug in? 3 and 5. So let's plug in 3 first. We have 2 times 3 minus 4 plus 6. Here we have quite a few things going on, so we need to make sure we do PEMDAS to keep our order of operations. So what are we going to do first here to solve? Not distribute. The parentheses act, or the absolute values act as parentheses, so we do what's inside the absolute value first. So 3 minus 4. So what's 3 minus 4? Negative 1. What's the absolute value of negative 1? 1. So then we have 2 times 1 plus 6. What's 2 times 1? 2. And 2 plus 6? 8. What's our point that we plug in here? 3, 8. So remember, we get our x and our y. So we can go ahead and graph it. I'm going to go to the right 3 and up 8. And put a point here. What do I do next?
4.
Plug in 4. So we're plugging 4 into 2 times x, so we plug in 4 there, minus 4 plus 6. What do we do first here to solve? Subtract. 4 minus 4. What's 4 minus 4? 0. So we have 2 times the absolute value of 0, which is just 0, plus 6. What's 2 times 0? 0. And 0 plus 6? 6. So then what's our coordinate point here? 4, 6. So we go to our graph, we go to the right 4 and up 6. Put a point there. Now we can plug in 5. So we have 2 times the absolute value of 5 minus 4 plus 6. What do we do first here to solve? Subtract. So this is 2 times the absolute value. What's 5 minus 4? 1. And what's 2 times the absolute value of 1? 2. Because the absolute value of 1 is just 1, so this is 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And what's 2 plus 6? 8. So then what's our coordinate point here? 5 8, perfect. So we go to the right 5 and up 8. Once we have our 3 dots, we can draw our V. All right, we have one last one. So 29. Any questions on 28? All right, let's look at 29. So this is -3 times the absolute value of 0.5x plus 1 and then minus 2. What do we do first here? So we put what's inside of our absolute value equal to 0. So 0.5x plus 1 is equal to 0. All right, what's the first thing we do to solve for x? Subtract 1. So 0.5x is equal to -1. Now what do we need to do? Do we find what x is equal to? Divide by what? Divide by 0.5. So x is equal to -1 divided by 0.5. What is -1 divided by 0.5? How many times does 0.5 go into 1? 2. So x is equal to -2. So what's the first number we're going to plug in? -2. What's a number smaller than -2? -3. And then what's a number bigger than -2?
Wait, Miss Carver, I have a question.
Yes.
How did we get -2 from, oh, it was 0.5?
Yeah, it was 0.5.
Okay, I thought it was actually like times 5.
No, that was a 0.5. Alright, so now we plug in -3. So we have -3 times the absolute value of 0.5 times -3 plus 1 minus 2. What do we do first here to solve? Remember, we have to do what's inside of our absolute value first, but before we can do -3 plus 1, we have to multiply. Multiplication comes before addition. So this is -3 times the absolute value. What is 0.5 times -3? So remember, 0.5 is 1/2. So what's 1/2 times -3? 1.5. So it's just 3 divided by 2. 3 times 0.5 is 1/2 times 3. So 3 divided by 2, that would be 1.5. But it's negative, so -1.5. So now we can do -1.5 plus 1, which is what? What do you think another number that we can plug in here would be better so we're not working with decimals? Do you think any number would be better than -3? This one, -4 would be better just because it's an even number, so then when we multiply it by 1/2, we get a whole number, and we're not dealing with fractions throughout our whole answer. So let's plug in -4. Because -4 is still smaller than -2. It's just going to make our lives a little bit easier. What is 0.5 times -4? -2. So now we have -2 plus 1, which is what? -1. So we have -3 times the absolute value of -1 minus 2. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. So we have -3 times 1 minus 2. What's -3 times 1? -3. And -3 minus 2? -5. So what's our coordinate point here? -4, -5. Perfect. So we go to our graph. We're going to go to the left 4, because our 4 is negative, and then down 5. Put our point there. Alright, now we're going to plug in -2. So we have -3 times 0.5 times -2 plus 1 minus 2. Oops, this goes here. What is 0.5 times -2? Guys, we're almost done. Hang in there. What's 0.5 times -2? -1. So we have -3 times -1 plus 1 in the absolute value minus 2. What is -1 plus 1? 0. And what's the absolute value of 0? 0. So we have 3 times 0 is equal to minus 2. What's 3 times 0? And what's 0 minus 2? 2. So what's our coordinate point here? -2. This is -2. 0 minus 2 is -2. So our point is -2, -2. So we go to the left 2 and down 2. Put our point there. Now we didn't want to work with odd numbers, so what's another number we can plug in besides 1? Besides -1? 0. 0 is going to be nice and easy to work with. So let's plug in 0. So we have -3 times 0.5 times 0 plus 1 minus 2. Alright, what's 0.5 times 0? 0. And what's 0 plus 1? 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1. What is -3 times 1? -3. And what's -3 minus 2? -5. So what's our coordinate point here? 0, -5. So we stay at 0 and go down 5. And then we connect our 3 points with the V. Any questions here?